I don't know about you, but most years the turn into Lent takes several weeks for me. Not until along about the third week of Lent usually do the warp and the weft of Lent's cruciform reality shake me sufficiently awake that I finally realize I can join the journey to the cross. Some years, I'll admit, I just seem to skate across the surface of Lent and its meaning for me, which also inevitably leads to a flattening of my Easter joy in those years. The two, you see, are inexorably linked, which is why we hold fast to this Lenten part of the Paschal mystery in which we trust that God is gathering up life and death and making the whole of it new in some deeply mysterious way. But this year has been different for me. Lent has been sort of front-loaded for me, I think for a confluence of reasons that I want to focus on and reflect with you for a few moments here on this first Sunday in Lent. I know a piece of it was that Ash Wednesday came earlier this year than most years, pushed into the first half of February by a Passover moon's determined nudge on this fragile earth and on our earthly existence. I heard many of you say this week that Lent crept up on you this year. It seemed premature, and I get that. And yet, isn't there something in the surprise of unreadiness that's worth reflecting on when we come to Lent? I know that a piece of it for me this year was a trip a couple of weeks ago back home to Arkansas to visit my ailing father and seeing the cumulative effects of 80-plus years of gravity's incessant battle to inter him back into the earth, dust to dust, inching ever closer to a sure victory. It's a natural thing, and it's a sure outcome. But the mortal image of an aging parent is surely a stark one for us all, and a Lenten one for us to consider. I know in the mix was my own surgery 10 days ago that prepped me for Lent. A simple outpatient procedure, for which I asked for your prayers and was so grateful to receive them. The surgery went well. I am fine, thanks be to God. But that moment when the anesthesiologist puts the mask on your face and says, I'm now going to give you that medicine that's going to put you under. That moment when you are keenly aware you have absolutely no control in this world. You know what I'm talking about? Third time in my life, the same all three times. No control. When time stops and space collapses in on dreamless sleep, and you're left with thoughts that are stripped as bare as you are on the operating table, friends, that is surely a Lenten moment. But I can stay standing here a week and a half later. I am grateful for that experience coming when it did on the cusp of my Lenten journey. Those thoughts, that moment, that formless space, surely they are bound up in Lenten meaning, as is awakening on the other side. There it is again, the Paschal mystery. I know a part of it was walking through those doors this past Monday morning to see these stations of the cross going up on our wainscoting of this sacred space of Cathedral. I knew that they were coming. We selected these nearly 2 years ago. I've been involved with it since its inception, but I walked into my space, this space of my worship, and I was stopped short by those stations. As pieces of art, you must decide whether or how they will influence you, but my sincere hope is that you will engage them as part of your Lenten journey this year. We're honored to have the artist who created these with us, Virginia Maximowitz from Philadelphia, with us today. She offered a forum at the last hour. She'll be with us for a reception and communal walking at 2:30 this afternoon. They'll be here all through Easter until Good Friday for your engagement to assist you in your work of Lent. Because you see, this season of Lent is a time and a space which we mark differently. The invitation to observe a Holy Lent is to set it apart, to measure time and space in ways that do stop us short, that prompt reflection on what really matters in life, to walk in the world keenly aware of the crucifixions that will occur today in this city, in this country, in this world of ours. You've heard me say more than once that Lent is not about giving something up in and of itself. If I give up chocolate for Lent only to think all the time about chocolate, then I've missed the point of giving up chocolate. It becomes just a gimmick. And I don't think that we find God lingering much in the valley of gimmicks. But if that which we give up creates space and time for us to contemplate our spiritual journey more deeply, then maybe, just maybe, it will break us open to this Lenten experience. And we make our way to the cross as Christians together, as the church. For all of its shortcomings, the church has found the wisdom to hold fast to this Lenten season as a time to address very honestly the fact that death is a part of life. The fact that death is a part of life. And you can deny that for a time, but you will never prevent it from coming to your doorstep. These stations of the cross intrude into our serene space of worship and into our lives. Mary's face at station 4, her face in her hands. That could be the face and hands of a mother mourning the death of her son by lethal injection in the prison's execution chamber, because that's our modern day form of crucifixion. Or she could be an immigrant down in Tacoma at the detention center, waiting to be deported, wondering whether or if she will ever see her children again. Or she could be an addict, wearied by the haunts of her relentless demon, face in her hands. Or she could be a mother in Florida who tries this morning to envision what life will be like in the wake of her child's untimely death at a shooting in a school this week. What has she to say to us today? And what might we say to her in return? Or at station 7, the bare leg of a young man could be that of a bound and broken Jesus falling to the ground in exhaustion on his way to be crucified. Or it could be the leg of a young man climbing from his tent under the Ballard Bridge, wondering if he will be attacked today simply because he's homeless. Or it could be one attempting to rise from the pavement of a Seattle street, having been tackled to the ground by overly zealous authorities of our day. What happens when you meet this man's eyes today, here? These stations of the cross intrude into our serene space of worship and into our lives because they remind us of how cruel our world still is, and how indifferent we can be to that cruelty if we close in on ourselves. But friends, make no mistake, the way of the cross never closes in on itself. Rather, it is always one of open vulnerability, willing to embrace all the sufferings of the world. And so I'd say, let this season of Lent intrude into your life. Be unsettled by it. but for a purpose. The great litany with which we began this service, that penitential order of things, the change to our liturgical flow, the violet color of spilled blood of our vestments and altar frontal, all of it is intended to help us set this season apart as one of weighty meaning and connection. If time warps for you a bit in this season of Lent and allows you to slow down and find a different cadence to the cross, then count that as a gift of mercy for yourself and for those whom you may encounter in Christ's name. And watch what happens next in this world, if you will. If your world twitches anxiously when you ponder death, its universal experience and its specific grip on you, then count it as a special portal into the Paschal mystery this Lent, and consider how that perspective of that Paschal mystery, the yin and the yang of death and resurrection, how that might shape the whole of your life, not just this season, but for the whole of it. Because Lent only makes sense by the light of Easter. Lent only makes sense by the light of Easter. And here on this first Sunday in Lent, when we have days and weeks to go before we find the resurrection glory, even now, even here, we trust that that Paschal mystery is stirring in a measure of hope for us by which we can make our way in this broken, hurting world, because in the Paschal mystery, we trust that God is gathering the whole of it up such that nothing is lost. No one is lost. And is inviting us on that journey. Will we believe it enough to go there with our Christ, to die and rise with him so that the whole world might experience that?